going to present myself again because you've both been there the last time. And so we're going to start with threading your needles. So that's something that you looked at the last time. So everybody's good on that. So you're going to take your thread and pinch it at the end like that, and then push it through the needle, the eye of the needle. It's tricky because, like I was telling Mona and Millicent, we're working with a pretty thick thread. Sashiko thread is quite thick, and the eye of the needle is small. So see, I'm having problems myself right now. So I think that, and if you have a set of Sashiko needle, you would have also different type of eye needle. Some are a little wider. So I'm going to thread my needle. I can do this. Okay. Oh man, I'm having a hard time with this one. So I was showing also there is such a thing as a needle threader. I don't know if you see, I'm going to put it down like this so you can see what it looks like. And that is making the process a little easier. Okay. All right, here is my, okay, I've threaded my needle. So everybody knows how to make a knot at this point? Okay, so I'm gonna show you a different way to do this to start. And we'll start this way and end this way. The thing about this different way of doing is instead of making a knot that can be visible on the other side, we're going to do it a different way that actually is not going to be visible anymore. And when you want to have something that can be seen on both sides, it is much better than if we have a knot on the opposite side. So in order to do that, so everybody should draw a line on your work. So you have with your pencil, the washable pencil, a ruler. I'm going to make my line. There. Everybody can see that line? Okay, it's right here. So I'm going to be sewing going this way. So when I'm starting, I'm going to reverse my work because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3 stitches going in the opposite direction. Okay. So we talked about the length of your stitches. Your stitches, everybody can see the length of the stitches. It's about 3 to 4 stitches to an inch. We don't want to make the stitch too large because then it's going to be very hard to read the pattern. Okay, so I did about 3 stitches. I'm going to pull my thread. Okay, I'm going to leave just a little tail like this. Did you see it? Then I'm going to turn my work, this time going in the right direction. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and exactly where my stitches were. So my needle is going down and then back up to where, okay, let's see, can you see how the direction of the needle?
Yeah, hold on really quickly. Sorry, Sarah. So so she's showing us a way to start the row without having to knot.
Yeah.
You don't see any knots. Basically you, Juliana, if you want to pull your thread through without knotting it, what she did is she basically took her water pencil, the pencil we gave you all, and then she drew a line with a ruler. You don't have to use a ruler, use a piece of paper. And
I'm gonna get this a little closer.
She like kind of started.
So yeah, so I'm going to be going in this direction. So for the first 3 stitches, we actually we're reversing. So that's why I turn my work and I'm doing 3 stitches going toward the left. Okay, I just got 1, 2, 3. And now I turn my work going in the direction that it's supposed to go. And I will go exactly in the same stitches that I've just made. My needle is going to go up and down and come out. So I'm repeating the same stitches. I'm going back in the same stitches that I did before. And this is what happened. And you see how there's a little tail that we can cut. Is that does it make sense, or is that too complicated for now?
And be honest, guys, I know last time you guys weren't talking, but do talk.
So Marissa and Sylvia, do you want to unmute yourself so we can so you can let me know if you don't, if I'm going too fast, or
that makes sense to
good?
Me, but I think somebody said in the chat that they were confused though.
Okay. Juliana, is that good? Do you understand how this is, or do you guys want to just start with the knot and just practice? Because I don't know if I don't want to confuse anyone at this point.
No worries. I think, so is it just like an extra loop that you're making?
No. So, okay, for now, let's forget that. I don't want people to be too confused.
Juliana, it's only if you don't want the knot showing, if you want to make it a 2-sided work. So like, you don't.
Okay, no worries.
Because you see, this is the reverse. Where's my camera? And there is absolutely no difference from the top to the back. So that's just a little trick to make it, like reversible. And so once we got that, if you feel more comfortable to just have a knot and just start with the knot, just start with the knot. Don't worry about that. So we're going to do Sashiko, you have to hold, let's see, hold your fabric. Unlike like embroidery where you have a hoop, or some of the sewing where you keep your fabric on the table, you want to hold your fabric so that you can manipulate, again, as your needle is going in and up, down, up, so that we can put several stitches on that needle. So let's start with the 4 stitches. You see how this is? And now when you pull the needle, you're going to hold the fabric, because what the fabric wants to do is that it wants to crimple, and we want to make sure it stays nice and flat. So I'm going to snip my tail here. There we go. So I'll start with just practicing on having a straight line. So like I say, hold your fabric and push your needles. So your needles is going up and down. and pull your thread through. How is everyone doing? Yeah, okay.
I'm doing okay.
Okay, what about Juliana? Okay, all right. So let's go to the end of that line that we did. This is our first practice. So as you get faster, I don't know if you see how I'm pushing the fabric toward the needle. And then pulling my thread. What happened is that when you're able to put several stitch on your Sashiko needle, your stitches are more even than if you were to do just one stitch at a time. Okay. So how much of the work did you do the last time? Did anybody
We try to make a
straight
wave. Like we did the straight line, and then some people moved on to the wave.
Okay, good. So once we finish the straight line, we can
And Sarah, just to confirm, like when you're pulling, when you put it, when it's behind,
yeah.
it's not supposed to be, it's supposed to be short. Like they're not supposed to be like evenly spaced spaces, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah, I
it's
see
supposed to
what you
be
mean.
like, yeah.
So if you have a very little negative space between your
Yeah,
stitches, it's very practical. If you want something that's very readable, and I'm going to show you an example. For example, so when I did the circles,
Mhm.
those circles here, the space in the negative space between the stitches is very small, so that you can really read those circles. I don't know if when you see that. So
Yeah.
that as you are able to control your needle and the amount of fabric and the length of your stitch, that comes like with practice. As you're doing more and more, you get to really control that and the visual that you're looking for. So for example, like those bamboo leaves that I did, I wanted to make sure that they were readable. So there's very little space between the stitches. And this one, there's more space between stitches. So it's really the effect that you want, the visual effect that you want will dictate how much space. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's no like right or wrong. That's, it's really what you're trying to, the visual that you're trying to achieve. And as you're getting more control, then you make the decision how, how the space is going to affect the end result. So what's important is to really like flatten your, to stretch out your fabric, because you'll see when we're going to start working in circle, it's very easy to bunch up your fabric. So those are good good practice to take, to learn as you go, we do this simple straight line. So, I mean, Sashiko stitchers, put like up to 20 stitches on their needle. And they
Wow.
have a way of, yes, and the way they're moving the fabric, it's just beautiful to look at, just to look at. And when they're pushing, they have actually a something like a little metal piece. It's like a ring that has a metal piece on the inside, and that's how they would push the needle like this with that metal ring.
It's actually a ring. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, because when you have that many stitches, it becomes really hard to push through all that fabric. Okay, so, and you can actually experiment as you're doing this very simple straight line. Make your stitches maybe a little wider, and then try to make them smaller and smaller, and see what it looks like, what's the you know, the effect that it has. All right, so I'm at the end of my line. So do you want me to show you how I end my thread here? So I'm at the end of the line. There. I don't know, for some reason it seems the blue is very dark. Can you see enough?
Yeah, we can.
Because otherwise I switch to the white fabric and work with blue. So I'm turning my work. So I was at the end here, at the end. I turn my work around. So now I'm reversing. So I'm going to do exactly what I did at the beginning to end my thread. So you can see how this is done. So I'm at the end, I will go under, and then I come back where, let's see, where the stitch is. So I'm reversing if you want. And I'm going exactly where the stitch that I just did were. So okay. I don't know if you see what I've just done here. So I've just reversed. And now I can snip the thread and there's no unsightly knot. The back is exactly like the front. So that's the trick part, to finish and start your thread.
Did everyone catch that?
Hmm?
I'm asking if everyone else caught that, like what she did.
Did you see? So I basically, I was at the end here, and I just turned around and reversed and went exactly over the same stitch. And you can just go over 3 stitches. That's all you need. Now your thread is anchored, and you can snip that, and you have a clean finish. And this is how, in traditional Sashiko, this is how it's done. They don't do knots. So it might be a little, you know, confusing at first, but as you get used to it, you know, it'll become like a second, you know, you won't even have to think about it. All right. So let's see. So Juliana, I was mentioning how when you're doing stitches, are you doing one stitch at a time, or are you putting several on your needle?
No, I'm putting several.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
What we did last time is we started a pattern where we just kind of started to get like creative. So I was just kind of finishing up my thread. And so I wasn't, I already had done a straight line before.
Okay.
But I just
right.
decided to, you know,
Okay. Great.
yeah.
Is
So I
anybody
was
doing?
just finishing that up.
Yeah. That actually, I find, so Sashiko stitching or kanta stitching or quilt stitching is all the same. It's just this simple up and down running stitch that we're doing. And it's a very simple stitch, but when it's repeated again and again and again, it creates absolutely beautiful, complex design. So from a very simple technique, you can do something really quite complex. And I'm glad you guys started with free drawing. Sashiko traditionally is very geometric. It's following patterns. And if you have time to look, this is a traditional, let me see, just here. So I don't know if you see this, it's a grid. Is that, can everybody see
Yeah, wow.
that? Or is that just a blur?
Can you hold it up against the camera just to show?
You know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it on my embroidery hoop so we could see it nice and straight. Okay. So.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Okay. So this is a traditional sashiko. You can still see the grid here. So it's basically you're drawing lines. This, I think, is 1/2 inch between each. And it's just square. So I've drawn my line. Then I started stitching line after line, then the horizontal, then I went vertical, and then the diagonal. And when you finished with the diagonal, you get this star pattern. Let's see. Good. It's really hard to. Okay.
That's good.
Okay. So you can see the star that it's forming as you know, when all those stitches are crossing. So like I say, it's a very simple, but it's just with the repetition, you get something really that can be quite complex. And it's extremely calming. It's meditative. And the technique is very, very, very simple. I'll show you another kind here. And I think since you guys have done straight, I think going in circle, which is like Zen for me, I find it extremely meditative. So to work in circle, I don't know if you see my circle.
Oh, yeah.
Here.
I'm gonna work on some circles today.
So it's basically just going in circle that, you know, you trace your circle and then you go in and in and in. And when you do several of them, like I did for the pants, you know, for mending, you get something really interesting from just the repetition of it. Can you see? Let's see, this is better. So I think what we'll do, since everybody's pretty comfortable with the straight line, we'll do some circles, you know. And so we were gonna work in something like this, similar to this. Okay, so for that, and you can you can just go ahead and freehand draw. You don't have to trace a perfect circle, but I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna start here. So let's see. I actually, usually I just trace the outside circle, and after that I just let my hand go around and around as I'm stitching. So we could do something like this, and then all right, so this is an example. So we could work in circles. So the way is it, everybody's ready for working in circle, or
Yeah,
are we done with the straight line?
yep, we can go in. Is
Okay.
everyone ready? Good.
What I'm gonna do is maybe see if I work with the embroidery hoops, it would be easier for you to see what I'm doing. It's not something that's needed for Sashiko. You don't need an embroidery hoop, but it's just so you can see what I'm doing more clearly. So either you start with a knot, and if you want to do the knot, you just knot the end of your string. Otherwise, we're going to do what we did before, which is do 3 stitches in the opposite direction that you want to go, like this, and then pull my thread, and I'm working backward. Okay. So when you're working in circle, you want your stitch to not be too big because you're going around the curve. So like this. Is that, can you see what I'm doing here?
Mhm.
Okay, here, so you can see the white line. And I'm putting about 4 stitches on my needle and pulling my threads. So how is everyone doing with we all doing circles or?
Yep.
Or
I'm currently practicing a straight line because I switched to jeans. Because
okay,
I
okay.
was using like a looser fabric. I was just working on a t-shirt, and
Mm-hmm.
it like, I don't know, this t-shirt is pretty worn, so it was just like crinkling a lot, and I wanted to work with like a sturdier material.
Uh-huh. So if that's okay with everybody, I would like to go a little bit into mending and showing how we can use the technique that we're doing here for mending, or just even decorating whatever, clothing that you have. So it could be really applied to something very practical, but while at the same time doing it decoratively, and again, this is visible mending, so it's not meant to be really just mending. You're decorating as well as mending what your jeans or shirt or whatever. So I'm getting close to the end of my circle, and I'll show you how we're not going to close that circle. We're just going to go just slightly below where we started. Is that it? Are you seeing pretty well what I'm doing, or you can see I'm about to get to the end of the circle now. So I actually really love doing circle. I find them very satisfying and fun. So I'm at the end of my circle here. So instead of closing the loop, I'm just going to go slightly beneath the one I just did. And continue. Now, the second row, I'm trying to stay parallel. Mm-hmm. Can you see?
You're just going slightly underneath, but you're continuing.
Underneath, yeah.
Okay.
I'm continuing, and what I'm
almost
doing
like a spiral.
Yeah, you're just spiraling around closer and closer to the center. But I'm trying to also line right under the one that I've done before. So here, I'm going to snip that tail, there we go. So can you see? It's running parallel to, what's there? To the one that I had before, that I just did. I mean, this is a very slow process. It doesn't go fast. You just have to take your time. And I think what is wonderful is that it slows down your mind, the process, and you have to pay attention to what you're doing. So your thoughts can not just slow down, but be here and now, and not constantly, jumping from one thing to another. It allows your brain to just focus on one thing, and that's a luxury nowadays.
So true.
Yeah. And no looking at your phone. Don't look at your phone. Don't take anything. I actually it was actually I think the psychologist Jung's sister, Carl Jung. His sister said that knitting, which is very close to embroidery, this type of embroidery, because it's very repetitive, allows thoughts to come to the surface. So it's therapeutic. Now, while we're doing this, I can tell you also that, so Sashiko means little stab, and were initially used to repair clothing, but also to thicken clothing so that you would layer up several, multiple layers of cotton and stitch them like this decoratively together. And they would make them much stronger, but also much warmer. And Sashiko really came from the northern part of Japan, where warmth was really important. And those were especially like fishermen's needed clothing that was sturdy and also warm. And in India, it has pretty much the same tradition too. It was old saris that were layered together and stitched together with a decorative stitch. Okay, so I'm doing the third row on my circle. So, and when you start to do this layering of stitches, you'll see that what you're doing becomes more and more interesting. So I'm almost at the end of my thread. I have to get a new. So Millicent, could you tell me maybe when we're like half an hour, maybe, so the last half hour we can do some mending, so I could show you how to mend a hole, you know, how to use that stitch. Okay.
Great. Right now,
I don't have a clock.
okay. Right now it's 6:40. So maybe
Okay.
10 or 15 minutes we could move to mending.
Okay. I have one hole we can practice on. So is anybody getting at the end of their thread? Because we've been stitching for a while now. No.
I'm not even almost I'm like almost done with my circle, but I still have a little bit of ways to go.
Uh-huh.
So,
well, so if anybody wants to see how to look again how I'm ending my because my thread's getting really short, so I'm gonna make sure that you can see what I'm doing. So it's getting really short. In fact, I lost it. I went a little too far. Okay. Oops. All right. I had to rethread my needle. So I was going in this direction. I'm turning and going in the opposite. So I'm going back into the stitch that I just did. So I'm going to, you know, follow my previous footstep if you want. So you see, so I'm going back. Is that visible? Can you see it? Mm-hmm. I'm turning and I'm going backward. Backward 3 stitches, pull it up, and now I can snip my tail. There we go. So technically I could stop right here if I wanted to, if I felt like, okay, this is enough. And I'm going to do a tail to my circle. So I need to.
That was really cool. That circle.
You know, what I've found is that really repetition really makes the most interesting design. Like if you do it in line, do lines of different colors, for example, and some going this way, you know, horizontally, some vertically with different colors, and you get something really interesting. And it's only the repetition that really gives it, like I said before, I'm repeating myself, but a complexity to your design, and it's just by repeating. That's it, just repetition.
I like that it's simple, like it's just one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Whereas like if somebody were to ask me to sew, like, I don't know, like a jacket, or I would be so like, that's too much for me.
Well, I think this is why, you know, this is in so many cultures. You find this type of stitching, which is called running stitch, in many cultures, because it's the most simple stitch, but what they've done with it, again, through repetition and through tiny little stitches, through all kinds of geometric patterns that are repeating again and again, like almost like what do you call it? You know, when you're folding the paper, you know, with those geometric shapes. It just makes it really interesting with with something very simple. So I'm starting on the tail of my circle here. So again, I'm starting in the opposite direction that I want to go. I do 3 stitches. Pull my thread. Just leave a little tail, and then I'm going to go right back into the stitches that I've created to anchor my thread. And the better you're at it, the more stitch you're going to be able to put on that needle, which is, by the way, why Sashiko needles are so long. They're longer than, they're almost like a half an inch longer than your regular sewing needle. It's to be able to put all those stitches on it. And the other thing that makes them unique is that they're very sharp. So when you stab yourself with, it's very painful. It can be very painful because it's made to go through multiple layers at a time, and the length is to hold many stitches together. So don't forget, whenever, you know, if you're doing like just what I call creative stitching, where you're just following your drawing, make sure that you flatten the fabric so it's nice and flat, so it doesn't bunch together, because we're putting so many stitches on that needle that it's easy to, in the end, have something that's completely wrinkled because we haven't flattened the fabric enough.
Do you have any tips on how to like better flatten the fabric as you go? Because I realized I did like a circle and there's a there's a little bubble in the center, which like isn't that bad, but yeah.
No, so, you know, in Kanta stitches, which is in India, they use exactly the same stitch. They love the little bubble that it creates, this little wave. They even have a name for that, you know, and that's what they look actually in a Kanta blanket, is to have those little waves. But we don't always want to have that. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to put several stitches on my needle here. And I'm following a curve, so it's kind of replicate a little bit what you're doing, Juliana. So okay, when I'm pulling the thread, I pull the needle and I'm holding my fabric. And what you want to do afterward is really like flatten to make sure that, do you see, because I went around a curve here, so you want to make sure you pull on your fabric afterwards. And you want to do that immediately after you pull your thread, because if you wait later and if you're going on a curve, it's going to be very hard to smooth that fabric because it's already, you know, pulled together. And you need to have, you know, the thread to there. So you pull your fabric and flatten it afterwards. And in Japanese, they have a name for all the stitches on when you put in all the stitches on the needle, there's a name for it. And when you flatten the fabric, there's a name for it for that too. So it's a movement that you need to do each time, you know, that you do your stitching. It's part of the process. Let's put it this way. So now, how do you feel about working on the grid? That's actually okay. So I just want to show this, Juliana, if you want to see, for example, you see, for example, if I'm not flattening my fabric, it's all bunched up here. So I'm pulling on my fabric to make sure that there, so that your fabric is complete. But you've got to do this as soon as you see that there is some bunching happening. Otherwise, if you wait too long, it'll be really hard to go back and have the thread that you need to give it the space needed. Okay. So I will show you also some very traditional design that's on a grid. And since doing a design on a grid, it's actually, all the necessary, steps and technique. And they do, grid design they take a while, because you have to draw your line, then do your sewing. And there's nothing that's different than what we're doing now. So I don't think, like I say, we don't really have the time to go into any kind of, complex grid design. If you want to just work on a simple grid, we could do something like that. Okay. So I'm just about done with my So when you're drawing circles and going further and further into the circle and your stitches are getting smaller and smaller, it's really important to smooth your fabric. Okay, I'm done with that. So at the end, to end your thread, you do exactly, you turn it to, and you're basically stitching backward into the stitch that you just did. Just three stitches, pull your fabric, and cut your tail. Okay. So I'm finished with my abstract. Let's see, let me turn it this way. There. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, and if I was to turn it on the other side, we have exactly the same design. So by doing it, the technique of not knotting, you can use something both sides. They're reversible, completely reversible. So that's the nice thing about not knotting. So where are we at in terms of, I have Marissa, Julian. I don't know, Sylvia, I think she's, I don't know if she's still there or.
She was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to do a little grid design, or I could show you that I shown you the ones that I just did, which is kind of a complex grid, but we could do something very simple that, for example, like the cover of, is it Make and Mend? She uses a very simple Sashiko stitching.
Okay.
So that, you know, again, this is, once you know the basic, which is what we're doing here, you just apply that to, you know, doing a grid. So you would take a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, a book, any straight edge will do. And I'm going to, I'm going to do mine a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to use my previous line here. So I'm 1/2 inch above, and okay. So this is, I'll show you how to do, we could do a wave, or we could do a star design, which is, I think, Mona, that's what you had. You ended up with this, didn't you do a star the last time?
Yeah, I did. It was
Yeah.
like,
So here's my grid. Can you see my grid? Very simple, 1/2 inch. Okay. Can you see it?
yes.
Okay. So this is just tracing. And what I would do is that I would just go ahead and sew along first the horizontal and then the vertical. So you have to, when you are working on a grid pattern, you have to follow, you know, and stay with the with what you're doing. You're gonna do horizontal first, and then vertical, or you start with vertical, or you do all your vertical line, and then you do all your horizontal line. So
do we have to, like, how do we, if we do all of the horizontal and all of the vertical first, do we do like a new, then do we like knot it and cut it every, not knot it, but do we backstitch and then like cut it every single time?
that's a good question. So what you want, if the reverse is not important for you, what you would do is you would just have a long float where you just will go from one to the next. So for
I'm sorry,
example,
you cut out. What did you say?
so if you're not, if the reverse is not important for you, what we do is that we do a long float. So I'll show you with mine. So I need to rethread. I need a new needle. So I finish with my thread. Okay. So I was showing also, Juliana, that I was showing to Millicent, that this is a needle threader. You can find those at any sewing supply. They have at the end, I don't know, can you see it? Maybe on a black background, or there is a metal wire here. And that metal wire is going to go into your needle, the eye of the needle. The thread goes into, you know, in the eye of that metal wire, and then you can just pull it right through. So this is a pretty nice tool that's really not, I think they're maybe like $1 or $2, and you get 2 or 3 of them. So that's a really neat tool to have. So I'm going to start on my grid. So either you do a knot, or you start with the reverse, you know, you turn your work around, do 3 stitches, pull your thread, and then work back into those 3 stitches that I just did. Always the same system, same technique. Do not do a knot. But if you prefer having a knot, you just make a knot. So I'm doing my first horizontal line here. Pull your thread. Okay. Okay, so I'm at the end of that first horizontal line. At this point, I'm putting about 15 stitches on my needle. See how it's all bunched up? And then you pull your thread, smooth your fabric. Okay. So I'm at the end of the first horizontal line. So I'm gonna, you want to finish with your needle going down under. So you're on the other side of your work. Pull your thread, and with your needle, you're gonna start on the next horizontal line up. So what's gonna happen is that you're gonna have on the reverse side, you'll have this long float. Can you see it? This.
Oh, so it's all connected, but it's just on the other side.
It's on the other side. So
okay,
we're just finishing so that we're resurfacing at the beginning of the second line. So of course on the reverse side, it's not going to be a very pretty, you know, because you have this long stitch. But if you want this to be visible on both sides, then we have to end each time and restart like we did. Otherwise, you just go ahead and resurface at on the second line. You're now started to sew your second. What we're going to do, if we're doing a star, for example, what I'm trying to do is that where the vertical line goes, I'm leaving a space. So I'm not sure if you could see that. Okay, let's see. I'm leaving a little space because if you want to create like a star pattern, you need to have that little space. Something. Okay, what we'll do. Okay.
So Sarah, just sorry, I just finished like drawing my grid lines. It's taken me a long time. So start off with horizontal.
Or, you know, if you want to start with vertical, it doesn't matter. As long, the thing is that you're going to do all horizontal or all vertical, and then you'll do the next. So
Okay.
we're going in one direction at a time. We're not going, you know, across and then up and then down. We were following what can I compare that to? It's just like when you're painting a wall, you're going to put the primer first on all the walls, and then you're going to put your second coat of it's the same kind of
That makes sense.
yeah. So I'm at the end of my second line, so you can see how I just went down with my needle and then back up on the next horizontal line. So basically you're doing this. Let's see, I'm gonna, with your needle, you're gonna go one direction, cross, next direction, cross. This is how you gotta sew, basically, the direction. Is that? There's so much light. I don't know if you can see. Can you see the drawing that I did? No. No. Okay, maybe if I show it like this. Is that better? Yeah. So when I'm sewing, I'm going one direction and cross and come out in the other. And this is basically the pattern that you're going to do with in terms of sewing. And then when you're going to do your vertical, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to go down and up and like that. So you're not interrupting your sewing. You're just, you know, it's a continuous. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that, yeah?
That
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay.
Also just a time update. It's 7:05, so we have about 25 more minutes left.
Okay. So let's say that, for example, we wanted to do a star. I just did 3 lines, so that might be enough to show how you would do the next step. So I would take my ruler and just draw a diagonal across, and across this one. See, my diagonal line is not so good. Yeah. Let's do a couple of lines.
So for every point where they intersect, you do a diagonal line?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is to do a star pattern. But the grid system is the beginning for you know, all types of design that you want. And the wonderful thing about those pencils that we're using is that if you make a mistake, you could just go ahead with your finger and kind of scratch off, and it'll remove that line. If you find, oh, like I did a line that was not the right, I didn't use the right grids or square. So this and this. I do this not so good. Okay, so and when you're sewing in diagonal, it's exactly the same system like we did before. I'll show you here. We go like this.
So should we start sewing diagonally before vertically?
No, so first you want to do your horizontal or your vertical, and then your vertical, horizontal. And then you go and you do your diagonal.
Okay, so it's like one or the other. It doesn't have to be like horizontal and vertical and then diagonal.
Yeah, it's either if you want to start with horizontal, or but the main point is to do them all. If you're horizontal, you do all those lines, and then you do, because otherwise it will get very confusing to do the motif that you're choosing, because you're basically going all over the place. And in order to get those straight lines, it's much easier if you do them perpendicular, and then this perpendicular, and then those perpendicular. And that depends the person. Some people really like to work on a grid. I don't work a lot on a grid, but it could be actually really fun. The one that I started working on, I think it's a lot of fun to work and see your design start to appear and make sense. So I would encourage you to do both. Try freehand embroidery, and try some more traditional sashiko. I have, this is, for example, a very nice, very traditional sashiko. That's with circles. So I can show you how this would be, like circles and circles and circles. So it's, I don't know, I try to deconstruct a little bit how that drawing for the pattern goes. So those are all intermingling circles that then form this beautiful flower pattern. So this is, that's something that is more advanced, but you can get something really interesting also by, let's see, I'm going to the gallery. There we go. So that's, for example, that's a very traditional sashiko pattern, which is just circles and circles and circles intermingling. It's also on a grid pattern because you want to make sure your circles are going to be connected, like right here, for example, and here. And then there is what we just did, which is just draw something, and then just let your needle do the talking, or you're just following whatever line you have. You can have multiple waves, for example, that are repeating again and again, and it's like almost like a Zen garden, if you want. How they would have those marks on the sand. So you could just draw something and then just repeat that again and again to have this sort of a wave pattern. So we have the tools to do whatever we want at this point. Once you get the basic idea of what the running stitch, how it works, how you start with your thread, how you end it. Now, again, if you feel like knots is fine with you, then you can just do that. But you got all the tools that you need to to, you know, to start exploring. So let's see. Let's do the, I'm just going to show you for the mending what I was doing. So I did the first one. Okay, make sure that you see what I have here. So this is how it looks on this side. And this side, I went with circles because actually I prefer circles. I like the fact that they're just, you know, sort of meditative. But I'm going to turn it on the opposite side so you can see how that works. Okay. So this is my pants on. And you can work with all types of threads as long as it's a cotton that is thick enough, like an embroidery cotton, a mercerized cotton would work. So if you want to work with multiple colors and, you know, have those colors kind of blend together, just make sure it's not too thin and make sure that it's something that is thicker than the fabric that you're using. The thread has to be thicker so that it stands out. And then also because you want something to be solid enough that, you know, it'll withstand washing or whatever. So this is how it works on the, looks on the opposite side. Can you see? So I have a patch. Here's my patch. And this one is for the other one. So I have a hole here that I haven't repaired. So what I would do is I would take a piece of fabric. It has to be sturdy enough. In this case, it's another piece of jeans. It's just lighter. And I have safety pins. Okay. So I would put my patch over the hole. You can see where the hole is right there. You want to make sure the patch is going at least an inch over where the hole is. You don't want a patch that's just cover the holes. And I think we just lost Juliana. And so I would anchor the patch with safety pin. Oh, here you
from
are.
The camera.
Cover the patch. So I'm anchoring the patch with safety pins. It's easier. You won't stab yourself than if you have needles that, you know, can poke out. So now you want to make sure you're not going to go through both layers. You don't want to. You want to be able to still put that pants on. So. Okay, so you can see how this is done now. I have my safety pin on all corners. And now I can turn my leg over. And can you see the through the fabric, you can see my patch is there. So either you could do just vertical line of different colors going back and forth through the jeans and the patch, or you could do like here, I started with circles. So I would do another circle. Let's see. I'm going to use that as my my shape for the circle. Okay. This pink. So my hole is going from here to here, and I would just trace around. sometimes you have to go over it because you could barely see it. So to make sure that you see where the sewing is gonna be there. Can you see something? My circle here. I don't know if it's very clear. And so I'm going to start sewing around and around and around until I get to, and taking both the patch underneath and the surface of the pants. And I'm just going to circle around like we did on our sample, you know, the circular stitches. So I need to, so I have my thread here. Now that's where that technique of going 3 stitches reverse is really handy, because when you're doing mending, you don't want to have a knot that's constantly rubbing against, you know, your leg or whatever. So that's when it's really worth to learn that other technique rather than doing a knot. So I'm going to start, let's see. So I'm going to, it's a little harder because we're going through pretty thick material, two layers of jean fabric. So here, you see, I did 3 stitches. I'm going to reverse it. And if you're working with a pants, you can go ahead and turn the end of the leg like this so that you're much closer to, can you see it? So now I can actually hold through the leg of the pants. I can hold the material. My needle. So I'm going now back into the stitches that I just did. And that's really important here to make sure that we are stretching the fabric so that we're not, you know, again, this thing of smoothing the fabric so we're not bunching it up. And I'm continuing my circle here. So the most important part is the patch that you put on the reverse to make sure that your patch is large enough to cover beyond your hole. Like I say, 1 inch on both sides is what you're looking for. So, any questions so far? No?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
That was pretty clear.
Lily, let's show us your pants.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was struggling, and I also tried to return to my shirt for a second. But I just kind of was trying to like get the straight lines down, because for me, fabric was really hard to punch through with the needle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just spending all my time trying to get that down. But I want to do some up here. Something like how you did the circles and then connected it down to the lines, so it kind of looks like a little like dandelion or something.
Are we looking at the bottom of the legs, or
yeah, this is the bottom of the leg.
Nice. Yeah,
you just go up. I was thinking.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And yeah, and use the colors, you know, different type of colors. I like your white and blue, that the, you know, that's
I think I
little contrast.
Some red, because I have a whole bunch of different colors.
Yeah. There's some great example of Sashiko mending. because at this point I call that decorative mending or Sashiko mending, using on Pinterest that I thought there was some that were quite beautiful.
Oh, I'll have to check those out because
Yeah.
I kind of cover these pants and like
of
mending.
It gets addictive. It's addictive. It's like tattoos. You know, once you start putting some, you want to put some more, and in the end, you're gonna have jeans that are gonna be so unique. You know, that yeah, people are gonna say, "Oh, I love those jeans. Where did you get them?" And you know what? You can't get them anywhere. That's what I'd love to say. It's like, you know, I made this.
Yeah.
You can't find them at Target and I think that's another very important part of this workshop, is that to be able to personalize what you have, giving a second life to your clothing, and at the same time be creative and use it as a therapy. So it has many, you know, there's lots of benefits from it.
Yeah, I think it's a skill that's like so useful. Like I always kind of lamented the fact that like home ec classes were never a thing like when I was in high school, because like I would like learn how to sew and stitch. And
me too.
Like hair, you know, and personalize.
Yeah. Well, that's once you get started, it's going to be hard to stop. It's going to be hard to stop, which is, it's good. You're starting on your own journey of making your own stuff. So I'm doing now the second. What you can also do now, this is the second row. I don't know if you see what I'm doing here. Okay. Okay, let's go this way maybe. Can you see my circle here?
Yeah.
And what I would do is I would go further and further in. Now, another thing that you can do, I'm going to cut this. I'll continue for myself, but the other thing that you could do is something like this, where you want to actually accentuate the hole here and have the fabric underneath kind of, you know, peeking through. So what we have here is slightly different stitch. It's not a running stitch, but it's very, you know, very similar. It's more of a eyelet stitch. So I'm going to show you how that works. So let's say that here's my hole, and I want to do this kind of peekaboo. And you can use red fabric or, you know, anything that you find if you want this to be contrasting. So what I'm doing is my hole is here and I'm tucking under. Can you see it? So I'm tucking the edge under. There. Is that visible?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. So I want to make sure it stays there. So I'm going to show you how that stitch works. So we're going to go, and with your needle, you're going to go down and up to the other side. We'll take care of that tail afterwards. So basically you just are going down where the, let's see, if I want to make sure you see what I'm doing. Okay, so we're going down and back up. So you're kind of pinning, you know, stitching this in place if you want. with just a straight stitch. Okay, this is, I'm gonna snip that. Yeah. So it's, can you see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Down and up. I'll do a few more and then it's okay. Let's see. So this is how, so you see how the stitch is, it's a vertical stitch.
Oh, it's like looping around. That's really pretty.
So this is a tail that I will take care of afterwards, but
I need to work on stretching out the fabric more, but I finished the grid.
Okay, that's better. We can see better what I'm doing here. So this stitch, the thread is now on the surface of my the jeans here, the jeans fabric that I have tucked in, right? I've tucked in the edge that were rough and fraying. So it's tucked in, and what I'm doing is my thread and going down and back up. Okay, can you see how that? Okay. So instead of being horizontal, we're now, it's a vertical stitch, but it's exactly the same process like we did before. So now the thread on top, I'm going, oops, going down. I'm gonna just show, and then back up.
So Sarah, we are out of time now.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any like last tips or tricks to show?
Like I said before, that if you want to use this for mending, you can this is the stitch that we've done before, and it's just going around and around until you get to the center of the hole, just like I did here on this one. So this is slightly different, and it's kind of a blanket stitch, sometimes called also buttonhole stitch. It's vertical, and that's maybe going a little bit, it's slightly different. So maybe, I'm introducing something that might be a little too much right now, but you could definitely use that Sashiko stitch that we've learned. You can use that for any kind of mending for holes. Just put your patch underneath, and then you can either do just lines, a grid that goes over it, or a circle like this. What else could I say? That, use your drawings, that you're doing that's creative, and just put them in stitches, instead of using pencils and colors, you use thread and a needle.
Thank you for this. No, this was wonderful. We appreciate you doing this. I feel like I learned so much, and I'm like you, I like the circles. Like I started to do the grid, and then I got bored because it was like
I like the circles too. I like the circles too.
Yeah.
Did you do, Juliana, did you do your grid?
I did. So I think it came out all right. The back of it looks very weird because I forgot to go like here and then back and then backs. And I kind of went like this. So, but I mean, it doesn't look too bad.
No, that looks great.
No, yes. You know, I mean, this is your launching pad. So from there, you know, you'll find out that it is not going to take long until you feel really comfortable, you know, doing all kinds of. And I agree, the grid pattern can seem boring when you're you're doing the first line, but trust me, when you start like doing your diagonal and you start to see a repeating pattern that's formed, it's exciting. So the beginning is boring, but stay with it, you know, and you'll see that after a while it gets really it could get quite exciting. It's more challenging.
Trust the process for sure.
Yeah. But it is very therapeutic, I will say that.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
My hand cramps a lot.
Yes. Yeah, I take break. I'm like, I got tea.
Do this every now and then because your thumb are getting a lot of exercise and tension. So just to get that loose, you know, do the.
I was thinking about how you said that like people who do like professional Sashiko stitching have like the metal ring, and I was like, that would be nice right now.
Yes,
yeah. A little sore.
It makes things much easier. And the other thing too is, and I don't know if get one of those.
Yeah.
It'll save you a lot of time. And you can find them at any yarn supply. I'm sure it's on Amazon also, but and they're really not expensive. So you can see here the little metal wire, and I could show you again how that works, because so this goes into the eye of the needle. So you just put the wire in, and then your thread goes right in there, and you pull.
Oh,
seamless.
Magical.
Much easier. Yeah. Magic. So anyway, that's just the beginning. It's a journey. So I hope that I've lost. There you go. I hope that all of you. I mean, this is a great time to do it. It's usually cold outside, and
no, we appreciate it.
Be here. Yes, be here in the moment and let your brain shut down a little bit and relax. That's important.
So
yeah,
true.
I really like it.
All right.